I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanakimes.
All right, so first play we're going to look at 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everybody? Mike Kadlick and Tayler Kyles here for CLNS Media, back with another episode of the Patriots Daily Podcast, powered by our good friends at Prize Picks and Game Time. And today, we are powered by another very special guest here on the show. It is Robert Mays. You know him from the Athletics Football Show. We're going to get into a lot of Patriots talk, a new era, Mike Vrabel, a Stephon Diggs visit that has just come onto the radar here. But before we get into it, Robert, thank you so much for joining us. And how are we doing today?
Happy to do it. I'm doing okay. You know, we're in this weird like post-free agency kind of pre-draft vortex in the NFL calendar, which always throws me for a loop a little bit, but we're all just doing our best.
Have you got a chance to catch your breath since the combine?
No. I mean, when would I have done that? There's no time to do that. I mean, that's the nice part of it. You know, that's the nice or bad part about the NFL calendar, however you want to look at it. I mean, the last 10 or so days since free agency started, it just a whirlwind of stuff. I mean, and this year it started 2 days early. So the combine finished March 1st about?
Yeah.
And March 8th is when all of the free agency news started pouring in earnest. Really March 7th. I think the Geno trade happened on that Friday. So, and even that week, that's all free agency preview time. So no, there's never a dull moment until the draft ends. I think we all know that your quiet time is potentially coming from like June 1st through July 1st. And that's all you get.
It's so funny when people outside of the sphere are having a conversation like, oh, it's the offseason for it. And you're like, no. That is not how this league works.
Somebody asked me the other day, like, how many shows a week do you do in the offseason? I was like, 4. They're like, what? And I was like, yeah, it's 4. You know, you guys, you do that daily grind. You know more than I do, but there's always stuff to talk about. And again, that is both a good and bad thing when you're someone in our position.
100%. And it is, the offseason, it flips, right? During the regular season, it's more so like regimented. You know, you have games to talk about, you have previews to talk about. Off season, it's just a bunch of nonsense. Probably isn't the right word, but a lot of it is nonsense. It gets into silly
good nonsense, though.
Absolutely. And the latest in Patriots land, Robert, is a visit with Stephon Diggs. The 31-year-old is in Foxboro as we speak. Not going to timestamp the pod, but pretty much as we speak, he is here. He has met with the team. He has gone to dinner with the team, taking a physical and in some meetings today. Patriots obviously haven't done a ton to address the wide receiver position, not only this offseason, but really at all over the last couple off seasons. Mac Hollins signs last week, but besides that, it's dull in the wide receiver room, to say the least. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on the Patriots potentially bringing in Diggs, his fit with the team, your thoughts on his maybe off-field struggles, if you will. People kind of wonder if he's how much of a diva he is at wide receiver. So 30,000 foot view, your thoughts on the pass potentially bringing in Stephon Diggs.
This is a rich text. There's a lot we can dig into here. I was always curious as I was looking at the depth chart about how they would try to address the position, just from a from a short-term point of view and a long-term point of view. So if you bring in Steph Diggs, and we'll see when he's going to play, but let's just say theoretically it's early in the season, like a month into the year, and he's going to be somebody with his background, pedigree, etc., needs a lot of attention and a lot of targets. You are right at that moment cutting off opportunities for young players on your team. That's okay if you think that's in service of Drake May's development. You want to have him, you want a reliable pass catcher in one of those spots, and then you can use some of those other opportunities, the 2 other receiver spots, to cycle through some young guys and get them chances. If you feel like that's the right balance, I think that's totally justifiable. I just wasn't sure after passing on the first wave of receivers in free agency if they were just going to say, why would we spend $12 million on Josh Palmer when we can just try to draft another Josh Palmer in the 3rd round and let's see how it goes? So I do think there will be a little bit of that, but trying to offset that with a somewhat proven commodity, I say somewhat because of the injury stuff, to make sure you have at least one reliable pass catching option coming into the season. I can understand that if you're Mike Vrabel and you're this team.
And you mentioned taking away options from those young guys. How do you feel about the young receivers on this team? Because it doesn't feel like talent is really the issue. A lot of it is there haven't been adults in the room to kind of show a lot of them the way when it comes to route running, being a professional. Jalen Polk obviously had his struggles where after having glue and, traps for hands in college, can't catch anything in the NFL, and it seemed like he just got in his head. Javon Baker, talented, also just wasn't really there in terms of, being on top of it in his assignment. So do you feel like this is a room where if all works out, maybe it is a young group, but more like a Packers youth where there's some upside there? Or do you think they're going to have to lean on some veterans, at least early on?
It's a great question. And sometimes we see teams do this where they look at guys who underperformed under a previous regime and think, that was an ecosystem thing. Like that was circumstantial. We can get more out of those guys. But it was so rough with Jalen Polk last year that I don't know if you can even convince yourself that's the case. So I think we'll get a signal of this come draft day. Like in the first 2 days of the draft, I think we'll get a very good understanding of how Mike Vrabel thinks about the receiving group that they brought in last year. And it speaks to the dynamics in that front office. Right? If they bring in, let's say they draft the receiver in round 2, which I know that's a checkered history for this organization. There's a lot of scar tissue for fans of this team.
Yeah.
Let's say they do that, right? That to me sends a signal that this is Mike Vrabel's team. We already kind of know that, but the idea that that guy they draft would immediately supplant Jalen Polk in the Patriots' plans, I think tells you a lot about who's pulling the levers there and who's ultimately driving this thing.
Second round Patriots wide receiver just sent a shiver down my spine. Talking Polk, talking
Dobson, Tyquan Thornton. I mean, it is a tough history. I know it well, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You're up, Tyquan Thornton.
What did you say?
Super Bowl runner-up Tyquan Thornton.
Oh, yeah, he was practice squad and all. Even N'Keal Harry picked 32 right on the cusp. So, again, we'll see what happens. New regime, new era. We've talked about it. Hopefully, a little bit of carryover in the front office, but hopefully they can nail wide receiver here eventually. But speaking of that new era, it is Vrabel's team now. Front office, Elliot Wolf running show, along with Ryan Cowden, and a couple other guys that have sort of turned in this new Patriots nucleus. Receiver, we mentioned it, hasn't really been hit. Left tackle, still kind of a mystery. But Patriots hit Milton Williams. They signed Carlton Davis. Harold Landry is here now. A couple other guys, big ticket free agent signings. Just wanted to get your thoughts on the start of the Vrabel era so far. What you've seen from the outside looking in. Are we on the right track? Are there things to improve? What have you made of, I guess the moves they made so far?
I can understand all of them. The fact that they weren't willing to get into that Dan Moore, Jalen Moore, or even Cam Robinson tier of left tackles, not necessarily surprising when you consider where they're picking, but it really does increase the urgency to find that tackle at 4, because I don't want to go into next season with a hope and a prayer at left tackle for my second-year quarterback after what they made him go through last year. So I do think that's the one big question still left remaining to me. If they sign Steph Diggs and they roll with the kids and one more draft pick on day 2 at receiver, I can live with that. Something needs to happen at left tackle, but not wanting to overpay on what you think are solely floor raisers that aren't worth it. I completely understand landing there. Everything else they've done, I think, tracks to me on 2 different levels. One, you're going to have to overpay. You know that. It's just the nature of free agency, period. And it's especially the nature of free agency when you have $160 million in cap space and you are truly a rebuilding team that's going to be a hard sell to bring guys to play for you. So the fact that they had to get into a bidding war with Milton Williams, if you're looking at that contract, Milton Williams has to be a superstar to play up to that and to give you ROI on that. That's just the nature of the beast when you're in the Patriots position. Other signings, like the Carlton Davis one, that one's curious to me just because, all right, Carlton Davis he's younger than you think. He's only 28, but his injury history, I think, it's a sliding scale for corners. Like if they've been consistently banged up, like in their minds, in my mind, he's like 30. But no matter which way you slice it, he's probably going to be on the tail end of things when you're ready to compete. So when you spend money on a guy like that, what that says to me is this is how we want to play. This is the guy that exemplifies how we want to play, and we're willing to pay a premium for that, even if there's some misalignment with the timelines. So those 2 being the big signings, I do think makes sense to me. The Harold Landry one is the most confusing one. I just don't know what his market would have been. I just don't know what market you were getting ahead of in giving him that sort of contract. And maybe there was going to be more demand for him when he did end up hitting free agency, but that screams to me of, I know that guy. I'm willing to spend on that guy. And I don't necessarily think in this case, that's probably worth it, even when you have as much money as the Patriots do.
The Harold Landry one feels to me like you're just giving a guy that a bag. Like if he's a culture setter, if he's still productive, I don't care how he gets 10 sacks. If he gets 10 plus sacks, I really don't mind. It's the same thing with Matthew Judon. More efficient one-on-one winner, but a lot of his production was schemed and kind of capitalizing on others around him. I wouldn't mind that so much. Same way, I didn't really mind the Patriots not going all in on some guys they could have gotten via trade. Now, there were some big names, though, who I did really like DK Metcalf, obviously one of the best deep threats in the league. Laramie Tunsil ends up going to the Commanders. Now, first, you have to consider whether these guys wanted to come to New England, which, as we've kind of addressed a few times, not a lot of people do. But do you agree with their decision to say, we're going to hold on to our draft capital and try to address these glaring holes that way? Or do you think they should have been in on a DK or a Laramie Tunsil or anybody else who was kind of in that?
Cooper Kupp in that mix as well.
Yeah. And I think that, it's interesting. I understand not wanting to give away draft picks when you're in the Patriots position. I tend to agree with that, even for a team as wide receiver starved as they are. I am not a proponent of trading the 52nd pick in the draft and giving DK Metcalf $30 million a year. I would rather spread out those resources elsewhere if I were most teams in the league. I think, honestly, the Patriots would have the best argument for not doing it that way because it's in such dire straits from a receiving talent perspective. But I still think I'd rather roll the dice on young players than tie up that many resources in DK Metcalf. I don't think people really understand, when you give a guy $30 million and trade a second-round pick for him, that is an enormous investment, an enormous investment, because it takes the contract and only accelerates it because you're adding draft capital to it. That's just not something I'd be willing to do. The Tunsil thing is a slightly different conversation, but it's complicated by where they're drafting and who might be available at 4. If you're Washington, you don't have a pathway to an elite offensive tackle prospect picking 28th in the draft. Giving up a couple picks to go get a guy like Laramie Tunsil, especially when you're at their position on their timeline. You went to the NFC Championship game last year. You think you can win some games pretty quickly. I understand that bet for Washington. I can understand the Patriots just saying, do we really want to give up all of that and then sign this guy who's going to be on his, I think, 4th contract at this point, even though that's a little misleading because they're short deals, but he's on the wrong side of 30, still a very good player, but is that something that's worth investing in when we can hopefully find our left tackle of the future in the top 5 in this year's draft? So I get landing in both spots. The Tunsil one is more defensible to me if they wanted to do it. The DK one, I don't mind skimping on that whatsoever.
It's definitely fair as far as the compare and contrast to Washington, because people think they're on similar timelines, new head coach, second-year quarterbacks, but like you said, Washington went there. They were on the cusp of the Super Bowl. New England still has to prove, they can actually have a foundation before they go make those sort of monster moves, call it DK, call it a left tackle, where, next year, if we're talking Patriots Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, and then you go drop a bunch of draft picks on a left tackle, now it makes a little bit more sense. But as of right now, still putting it together. Still haven't got the receiver.
Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. And all you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. So run your game all season long on Prize Picks. They now offer Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. And the second half of the basketball season is officially here, and the race to the playoffs is heating up on Prize Picks. So don't miss your chance to cash in as the league's best fight for playoff positioning. You think LeBron James will get more than 24 points? You think Giannis will get more than 35? Cook up those hot takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season. All you got to do is sign up on the Prize Picks app today. Download the app and use that code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
But on the offensive line front, they did sign Garrett Bradbury after releasing David Andrews last week. Bradbury, I believe, is 29, but was just replaced by Ryan Kelly in Minnesota. Just your thoughts on that sort of switch up from Andrews to Bradbury. If you have any sort of, insight on that and where you think that lands. Did they fix center with a Bradbury signing? Do they still need to address the interior offensive line even further in the draft? I know Cole Strange, former first-round pick, is here as well. But your thoughts on that sort of switch up from Andrews to Bradbury?
Bradbury was $6 million a year, right?
Yes, I believe
something like
so.
that. Yeah.
Let the money speak to you. $6 million a year is not a lot for a starting offensive lineman in free agency. That's a we're going to be white knuckle in this a little bit. This is the guy we think can play, but not somebody that we can't replace.
Yep.
And I think that's what that sort of contract says to you, where if we find a center in the second round that we like, and that guy ends up being better, that's fine. But this gives us at least a temporary solution at the position. That's what that contract says to me. So I still think there's plenty of work to do along the offensive line, just even at right tackle, right? Like, how long is Morgan Moses going to be there for you? I think just making sure you're supplementing some of these Band-Aid moves with long-term planning is probably worthwhile if you're in the Patriots position. But I think getting a guy like Bradbury, getting a guy like Morgan Moses, now we'll see what happens at left guard. You have Nwenu at right guard. If you get the left tackle, then at least you get to a place where when we go into week one, I think that I can justifiably think my quarterback is not going to have his head ripped off. And I think that's kind of the position you want to be in as we turn the corner towards September.
While we're on the glaring holes, I think it should be acknowledged that the Patriots have youth at a lot of these positions, like Caden Wallace at right tackle, Layden Robinson closed out the year at left guard, started to play better, and then we addressed the receivers as well. Whether it's sophomores, whether it's juniors, right? Like the Marte Mapus, the Keon Whites. Do you feel like there's a pathway to some of these guys having true breakout seasons? Keon had like a mini one, right? But there was no one around him. So he just started getting double, triple team down the stretch, and his effectiveness started to fall off. But like Terrell Williams, Josh McDaniels, guys who can really have proven they're already leader of men and can execute the job at a high level. Who do you think can take a pretty significant step and help the Patriots out?
It's a great question. And I think it's a good thing to point out. And that's something where you guys have such a good understanding of the depth and the guys who got some opportunities last year, but aren't necessarily household names. I like some of the stuff I saw from Layden Robinson. I know it was an up and down year because you're a 4th round pick. It's probably going to be an up and down year, but banking on those two guys, him and Coleman being your Wallace, whoever they drafted last year. I'm Brandon Coleman and Caden Wallace, confusing my 3rd round tackles in my head. So
Michael
I think
Washington.
that, so I feel like if those are your depth pieces and you feel like, they're young guys with upside, we feel like they're worth having in the pipeline. We'll see what happens over time. I'm totally fine with that. I think you've invested in those guys. They've shown enough flashes where you think those can be our depth pieces now. Maybe Caden Wallace is our right tackle in 2026 after another year of seasoning. I think that's a reasonable way to approach it.
We want to get you out of here with this. And we've asked this question of a couple of our guests this week across the nation. And it is floor and ceiling for the New England Patriots in 2025. Now, obviously, back-to-back 4-win seasons, 3 coaches in 3 years. We know the drill. 7. I think I saw the numbers or heard the numbers the other day. It was 5 offensive coordinators since Tom Brady left. 7 starting quarterbacks. It's been a train wreck. But and there's
welcome to how the other half lives.
Exactly. And so, but on that note, it seems like, they're on the right path. You have the quarterback. Hopefully you have head coach with experience and can kind of take you there. But want to get your floor and ceiling for the 2025 Patriots. If all goes right, how high can this team go? And if things don't go so hot, then where could they potentially be?
Be as brutal as you want. I could take it.
Well, you know what? The thing is, when you have a quarterback that's as talented as he is, I think you never want to take certain pathways off the table. I don't think they're going to be like a playoff team necessarily, but I feel like a bigger jump than people expect is at least on the table because you have a young and talented quarterback. So let's say they sign Diggs. Let's say they draft a receiver in the 2nd round. Let's say they draft a tackle at 5 overall. And you feel decent about your offensive supporting cast heading into the year. You have an adulted offensive coordinator, and you feel like Drake May is going to take a significant step forward. That's a group that doesn't have to be embarrassing. I mean, that's something that can be competitive and potentially exciting. So, but a lot of stuff has to come together for that timeline to unfold, but I wouldn't ignore it or take it off the table. On defense, you have some decent pieces. Again, you mentioned if you have Milton Williams next to Keon White, how much better does that make Keon White? Now you have Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis. You've got some interesting guys in the spine of the defense. Like I feel like they could be relatively competitive this year. Like I think the best case scenario in year 1 of this is, and it's not really year 1 because Drake May's in year 2, etc. Feeling like last year's Cardinals to me is like a worthwhile place to be if you're the Patriots, where like you maybe top out at around 500, but you're consistently competitive. You're interesting on offense. Like you see the ideas, you understand what they're trying to do. I think that's on the table. Like them winning 8 or 9 games in the best case scenario, I wouldn't rule that out. Them being one of the worst teams in the league, I also wouldn't rule that out. Like I think the floor is still probably like 4 or 5 wins if that plan on offense doesn't come together.
Patriots Daily is powered by Game Time, the best place to get tickets to your favorite events. And it's not just sporting events. There are also tickets to shows and concerts as well on the Game Time app. And they have our favorite feature, the Game Time Picks feature. That makes getting those tickets even easier, filtering out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And as you know, NBA playoffs are approaching, and the NCAA tournament is also here. The first round will take place in Providence, Rhode Island. So if you're local and want to get to those games, you could get into Session 1 in Providence for Friday and Saturday right now for as little as $125. And you get to see 2 games at that price. It's High Point versus Purdue, and then McNeese versus Clemson. So get in on it right now. Head over there to Game Time. That is the all-in price as well, that $125. You got to toggle that on in the app. It's my favorite feature. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it?
I know the plan was like for this to be Houston, and then the Commanders do it, and it's like, oh, well, why can't you? But at the same time,
Right.
The Commanders got very lucky. Like how many of their games came down to some wonky thing happening down the stretch? It takes a little bit of luck, and like you mentioned, there's certain pathways where things can happen, things cannot. Actually, one more thing I wanted to ask you, though. When it comes to Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels, guys who are established in the league to a degree, you kind of know what they are. Where do you think those guys need to get better in this new stint? Because Mike Vrabel wasn't perfect. Josh McDaniels, the big thing with him, and this is really like a local kind of nugget, but he actually went to different teams, different college programs, and tried to kind of reboot his offense, modernize it. And it seemed like he and Vrabel had a decent idea that they were going to get an opportunity to maybe work together, maybe with the Patriots. So it feels like they've had Drake May in mind for a while and how they'd want to scheme things around him. So how can those two leaders improve and really make themselves better in, obviously, byproduct of the team?
The Brable thing, I mean, his biggest issue in Tennessee after losing Arthur Smith was he just failed to replace the offensive coordinator properly. And you watch the struggles they had on offense and just the lack of infrastructure on offense. That's what ultimately was his undoing, that not being able to find the quarterback. And so if they already have the quarterback, hopefully, and if you can get the right offensive coordinator, I think a lot of the sins of the Vrabel Tennessee era get absolved. On the Josh McDaniels front, I think that those visits to college teams is really interesting because I think there are 2 probably fronts I would say I'd want to see just better performance out of Josh McDaniels. 1, personality management consistently has been an issue, right? Like, and that matters more as a head coach than it does as an offensive coordinator. Yep. So that's less important in the current role. And there's a reason he's been able to succeed in this role for a very long time. The other one that I think is more relevant to this job specifically, the Patriots offense and the way that the Patriots offensive system works is unique as it relates to other NFL systems now. The amount they put on the quarterback is very different than how most offenses in the NFL currently operate. And if you look at the amount of responsibilities, Mike points, run game checks, the amount of post-snap decisions the amount of pre-snap decisions you have to make, where it's man zone here, it's 1 high, 2 high here. There is so much information that the quarterback has to process and operate with. That's really hard to put on guys who are not Tom Brady. And I think that was part of the struggle with Jimmy Garoppolo in Las Vegas with Josh McDaniels, is that even though he was raised in this system, he doesn't have the capacity to run it properly. So Josh McDaniels going to the college game and potentially finding ways that lessen the burden on young players and young quarterbacks specifically, where, all right, we understand the benefits of doing it this way. In the long run, this is going to make you a much better quarterback, and it's going to give the offense more flexibility. But maybe in the intermediate steps, we try to take a little bit off your plate. There's a middle ground to be found. I'd be interested in hearing more about that process in the Josh McDaniels 3.0 that we're going to see this year.
So we actually have gotten some insight into that because Josh went on Games with Names, Julian Edelman's podcast, and it was last year when Drake got drafted, or it was like he was playing in the preseason, and they talked about that because Josh kind of acknowledged what he would do with Drake and said everything would be on the table. Like he seemed very giddy at the opportunity if he ever got it in the future to work with Drake, and said that with these young quarterbacks, it's buckets, right? So you fill one up, and it's like, how much can this guy actually handle? Which is why I think with Mac, he could handle all of it.
I was just going to say Mac
like,
took it and ran.
They gave him the keys early on, and he was like, I can do all this stuff. And you saw it. Like the first game against Miami, he's changing plays. He's making the mic points, and he's fluid. It was maybe his best game as a Patriot. And then with Patricia, he took that away, and Mac's like, what the hell is going on? You can't just give me all this control and then tell me I can't do it. And with Drake, all we heard last year was like, this kid's a supercomputer. Like he's the smartest guy on this team and all this. So obviously you don't want to overwhelm him, and I hope Josh does a good job of that. But it's exciting with a guy like Drake's skill set. If you do give him all the controls and say, hey, you like this look, go empty, force them to defend your legs or hit the seams, like that's exciting. But of course, it has to come in time.
Yeah, maybe he's ready to do it right away. And he might be, and I feel like I have a little bit of PTSD talking about this with the Caleb Williams experience last year, where they just asked him to sink or swim, and it was just way too much, way too fast. And I think I compare that to a lot of other teams around the league right now. And just when you talk to certain coaching staffs and certain coaches about the intentionality behind teaching progressions, like we're going to do it this way because it all builds on itself, rather than just being like, here's the offense. Like, I need you to do everything at the line of scrimmage from day one. That's a different way of thinking about it. And I do think that it can have benefits, but whether or not it's the right approach, I think is worth questioning when you have a guy that's not Tom Brady.
For sure.
I'm glad you mentioned the Garoppolo aspect in Vegas too, because again, he learned through the system. And then once he gets to Vegas, it was almost like that, where here, everything, take everything, where he incrementally gave it to a guy. And I guess it was different, but with Cam Newton, like Cam Newton hit it and played pretty well under Josh, because I think he groomed him into it. Same with Mac Jones. And you saw he kind of hit it almost immediately, but he was known for the head on his shoulders. And so it worked out really well. I think the positive here, Taylor, as you mentioned, is the Drake May aspect, where they give him the buckets, they start him slow, but then he also has that skill set where Mac was strictly a supercomputer. Hopefully Drake May is the supercomputer and also has the legs, the arm strength, the talent, fitting things in windows, etc., to really hit this thing and run. So an interesting way to look at it. And I think ultimately it's exciting, where the Patriots are going so far. So
it's also, it's a great thing to bring up though, because with Drake May, if you're Jimmy Garoppolo or you're Mac Jones and you're having to make a pre-snap decision about which side you're going to go to based on which coverage you think they're going to play. And in the modern NFL, it's very hard to do. There are not a lot of coverage tells. And even if you want to undress things with motion, etc., you're not going to be able to get all the information. You're going to have to make some guesses. You're going to guess wrong every once in a while. You're going to get fooled. If you're Jimmy Garoppolo or Mac Jones, you have nowhere to turn, right? If you get fooled, then there's nothing to do. With Drake May, it's like, I'm taking off. I got fooled, but I have other solutions to this problem. And I think that's why a quarterback like him becomes a pretty interesting proposition in an offense like this.
Still adjusting and like recalibrating as someone who spent his entire life. Like even the Cam Newton year, he was even a little like different physically. So the Drake May experience, it's fantastic. I'm still adjusting, but hopefully it just gets even better.
This is what modern quarterbacking feels like.
It's incredible. Even watching Tom Brady for years, as modern as it was back then, he had the brains on him, but he's still, the one thing as a Chicago guy, juking Brian Urlacher in midfield was the one thing we really got from Tom.
I remember that. I mean, that people are going to talk about when we go look back at like ridiculous Patriots performances. It'll be that Tennessee game in the snow that people talk about, but the Bears game in the snow, I think it was in 2010. That's one that is unfortunately burned into my retinas in a way that I'll never get over.
Gronk actually mentioned that game in Brady's like enshrinement ceremony in the Patriots Hall of Fame. He said it was the touchdown he scored against Urlacher was the play where Brady gained his trust, because he was telling him all week, like chicken wing, you got to get in Urlacher's body and then kind of shove him off. And he was doing it in practice, couldn't figure it out. And Brady was like, I literally will not throw to you if you don't figure this out. Did it in the game. And he was like, from then on, I knew that Tom actually trusted me. So not to re-traumatize with even more context, but I just thought that was a fun idea.
I remember where I was when I watched that game. That's how hard that game was to watch, because I really love that Bears team. And I think it was that was the year they went to the NFC Championship game. So it was, that was a really good team. And to watch the Patriots do that to them was absolutely brutal. But hopefully Ben Johnson will erase all of the bad things that have ever happened to me.
I was just
That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, there's new life flowing in both franchises here. Hopefully, hey, who knows? Maybe we meet in the Super Bowl down the road here sometime soon. But this
We
was
can only
awesome.
dream.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, Robert. We really appreciate the time. Before we get you out of here, let us know what you guys got coming over at The Athletic as far as coverage and what's coming down next and where everybody can find you as well.
Just endless podcasts. I mean, we're doing 4 a week again, like I said, through essentially all off season. And so Dane Brugler, now that we're post free agency, is going to be a huge part of what we're doing on the feed. He's going to be there once a week over the next couple of weeks, and then when he finishes the beast, we'll hopefully ramp it up a little bit. And so it's going to be mostly, almost all draft talk all the time, Monday through Thursday, Athletic Football Show, wherever you get your podcasts. So if you're looking for a national NFL show and you haven't found one, we'd love if you would check it out.
Your show is how I keep up to date with everything going on outside of our little bubble. So keep up the great work, buddy.
I appreciate you saying that.
Of course.
For sure.
Awesome,
all right.
guys.
Well, myself and Taylor will be back next week here on Patriots Daily as the offseason continues. Make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. We also have our premium content as well, so make sure you check that. We have our tiers. You know the drill. Taylor's got all of the film breakdowns coming as we continue through the offseason. So thanks again, Robert Mays, for joining us here. And for everybody else, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will see you very soon here. Peace out, everyone.
Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to become a member of Patriots Press Pass on YouTube to get full access to videos like this and much more really fun content. I cannot wait for you to see it.